So, Katie, what's your reaction to this decision by the judge to wait to address the gag order issue?
So it's actually completely reasonable, Jose. It's a part of a process. So what the prosecution has asked is for Judge Merchan to hold Donald Trump in contempt of court. And in order to be held in contempt of court, you have to violate an order or do something in front of the judge that is contemptuous. The order is the existing expanded gag order. So the process works where the prosecution says, Your Honor, issue an order for a rule to show cause, meaning have Judge Merchan issue an order telling Donald Trump he has to appear at a hearing, an evidentiary hearing that's set in a later date, to be able to show cause, to be able to prove and to explain why he should not be held in contempt of court. So it's a part of the process. During this evidentiary hearing on April 23rd, the prosecution will present the evidence of Donald Trump violating the gag order. Donald Trump can refute it or not, and at the end, the judge will issue his ruling. The key is what Yasmin says. How much does Judge Merchan want to establish order moving forward? As you guys can see, this is a process. It's going to take some time to get to the finish line. So Judge Merchan has to set the tone. A lot of people are scoffing, Jose, that $1,000 isn't a lot, but let's be clear. It can start at $1,000, and under the rules in New York, it can also include incarceration. And so we don't go 0 to 60. There is a process, and albeit people are impatient and frustrated because other people maybe would not be afforded this type of latitude as it's being perceived. But this is how the process works, and you want the process to work properly so that nothing happens on appellate review to say that Judge Merchan did something wrong.
Yeah, and Kristen, as someone who's worked on a high-profile trial, how difficult is it to find a jury that can look at this case objectively when the defendant has been so much in the headlines and in part of, I guess, people's everyday discussion?
You know, it's difficult, but it's not impossible. Extensive media coverage and public opinions can always influence potential jurors, right? Because it instills in them those preconceived notions of guilt or innocence. But jurors are ordinary people just like you and I. Some of them are not going to be able to sift through those facts and make the decisions, the facts that they hear on TV, from the facts that they hear from the witness stand. And some of them are going to be able to, as Yasmin and Katie said. That's why the jury selection is a process. It is a process where the judge has to maintain order, but allow the attorneys to actually go through and ask questions that really counter or allow them to identify those preconceived notions. Asking them about their media exposure, which we see in this case. We also had to ask those questions of the Cosby potential jurors, their existing opinions, their ability to set aside those biases, and really looking at their ability to comprehend the legal principles alongside of their life experiences, but with only hearing the evidence that they hear on the witness stand. So despite all of those challenges, it's not impossible.
And Kristen, just thinking back on your experience on, for example, the Cosby case, is it not human nature to simply have an opinion based on a preconceived concept of what that person is, who that person is?
Absolutely. But again, keep in mind, the jury process is not asking them to put all of their preconceived notions to the side. It's asking them to put it to the side just while they make this decision. So everything that the jury or the potential jurors, or actually the sitting juror, which they ultimately will decide on, everything that they know about Trump, they have to put it to the side. And they can only make their factual findings based on the evidence that comes in at trial, and they can only make their ultimate finding as to guilt or innocence on each of those charges based on the facts that they found and the law that the judge instructs them on. So yes, everyone comes with their preconceived notions. But again, it's really a question is, are they able to fairly and impartially view the trial and the evidence? And that's the key there.
And Yasmin, just looking over from our producers inside the courthouse, some of the potential jurors answering these questions are, essentially saying we are regularly part of the conversation that goes on in many American households. One saying that they've read The Art of the Deal. Another one saying that they watch CNN, MSNBC, Lawrence O'Donnell. Tell us a little bit about some of those answers that we've been seeing to the questionnaire.
Well, this is, I think, why the process gets so complicated, Jose, right? Because you get further and further down the road, but then there are certain answers that are given that are problematic. This is seat number 15. As I mentioned, they got to get to that magic 18 number before they can move on to that next portion, which is voir dire. One of the potential jurors giving answers like, I've read Art of the Deal, as you mentioned. They are part of the Republican Party. They have relatives who do fundraising for the GOP, and also talking about the fact that they followed Trump. They followed, I should say, in the past tense, Trump on Twitter when, in fact, he was president. So if you think about kind of the complications that poses, right, to the people, to the prosecution, in this individual being a member of the jury. And obviously, you would imagine that Todd Blanche or the former president as the defendant would want someone like potential juror number, I believe, who's seated in number 15, being a member of that jury. He has not yet been excused. He's lived in Lower Manhattan for a very long time. He's from Boston. He has not yet been excused. However, I imagine that is someone who the prosecution, who the people will focus in on during that voir dire section to kind of draw out more of their potential problematic presence on a jury that will eventually be seated in this trial, Jose.
And Katie, you wrote that it's not hyperbolic to say jury selection is the most important part of a trial. What are the stakes in this process?
Well, because if you don't seat the right jury, and I used right in quotes in my piece there, Jose, then you've lost the battle, because you want the type of juror that Yasmin just talked about. I mean, the reason why I was kind of nodding along, and it's relevant to what you just asked me, it's really an art form, right? Because as a trial lawyer, what we do is you can actually keep on developing a conversation when you move on to that kind of individualized questioning that happens in front of some of the other jurors, prospective jurors. You can actually dig deeper with this. Say I'm the DA, Jose, and I'm going to dig deeper with this juror who I know is going to be, quote, pro-Trump. Why? Because then I can actually look at the body language, the nodding of the heads, perhaps the vocal agreement. If I call on one of those other prospective jurors, I can say, juror number 112, do you agree with what juror 15 just said? And if they're like, yeah, absolutely, then you know what? I've created a 4-cause challenge to get rid of that, quote, pro-Trump juror that was juror 112 based upon how they respond to the questions that I asked to juror 15. And so it's a pretty amazing thing. You've got this grid in front of you, and I'm pretty old school. Literally, it's like a grid that you draw out by hand, and you got the names, well, internally, because publicly it's not public, right? But you got the names, you got the numbers of this jurors, you got all this information that's coming from the juror questionnaire that's being answered out loud. And then you kind of have to move and navigate your way through the answers so that you don't have to waste time going through 96 plus or 100 something. And you know, Jose, that's really important too. We know that thousands of subpoenas were sent to be able to get people to show up yesterday. Think about how many people actually don't show up. So you got not a lot of people showing up that should show up. And so the ones that show up, they have a reason why. They're either there to truly do their civic duty, or they want to get on this jury come hell or high water. And so you really got to figure out, how do I weed out and filter out what we call those stealth or those rogue jurors that don't really have the right reasons for sitting on that jury. And again, it's a science, it's an art form, it's luck, it's magic, it's experience. You got to count on your experience as a trial lawyer, being able to read instinctively what the people are telling you just based upon the way that they're looking, the way that they're moving, and the way that they're answering.
And, the benefits of old school doing things by hand. Yasmin Vossoughian, Katie Phang, and Kristen Gibbons-Fedden, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.